Today, very happy to see everyone again. After having a week of excitement, now is the time to settle down and continue not to be too excited. So we will continue our learning today. A new series of our learning, reflections in my life, which Sister Paru has started last week, right? And with the titles of birth. So in this series, there are 6 topics altogether: the jati, birth; jara, which we're going to talk about it later, about aging; talk about vidya, vyadi, vyadi. And this is the illness, marana, death. And then we cover another 2 topics, santuti and katanyuta. So by completing this, hopefully we will end 2022 happily. Right? Okay, so today, in fact, this topic is very interesting. I like this topic so much. I have been teaching the subject also. Is about aging. Okay, so aging, in fact, from the perspectives of Buddhism, we don't focus only on middle adulthood and later. So we focus on starting from birth or even in the conceptions. So the terms jara, which refer to aging, it covers the process of growth, human growth, from conception to death, right? To death. So in this context, which we are going to discuss. When you talk about growth, it is a continuous process, right? Right. And some of the characteristics of growth, we are aware of it, right? We know, like for example, when we want to classify or we want to separate learning group, this is adult learning group, adolescents or teenagers, or maybe children learning group, right? So it is quite obvious. We know that. But some characteristics of this growth or aging, we are not aware of it. And it is so important in our life to be aware of. Otherwise, we tend to neglect those important parts and we just focus on what we see. And what we see sometimes is not so helpful for us, in fact, to go along from conceptions or from childhood to death. All right. So we are going to discuss this topic. Is it interesting? Sounds interesting, right? let's have a look on the slide. I need to press. Okay. Okay, thank you. So second sessions of this series, Reflections of My Life, is aging. When you look at this slide, in fact, it shows from conceptions to death, we are going through many stages, right? Stages, and from what we focus mainly in terms of growth, basically very much on so-called the first half, the first half of our human growth, right? We focus very much on this. And sometimes, I think many of us have failed to, in fact, look into this, the declining part. But the process happened. We tend to focus on the so-called the development part, which we can see. Turn up. So scientists, social scientists, different professionals, they classify this process of growth and so-called aging to different stages. How many stages do you think that there are in the process of aging or growth? Children, right? Childhood, adolescence, teenage, adulthood, young adult, middle adult, and late adult turn-up, right? So basically, we try to classify the process of growth into 4, 5. In some educational professional, they classify into 6, some into 7, some into 8, even for the medical one into 9, and more detail. But what I'm trying to say here is, usually in the process of growth, we focus on only the first half of the growth, and we tend to not focus very much on which are so important of the second half of our life. And the second half of our life here, in fact, is the key so-called stage, which we have that potential to understand better what life means to us, right? So it's good for us today, we try to reflect on our life by looking at the so-called process of aging, right? Now, of course, like throughout the process of aging, like what Sister Santi also mentioned, there are always happy, unhappy, pleasure, not pleasure, a good one, a not so good one. We have to go through this process, right? But the tendencies of us when we are going through the process, we tend to focus, or we tend to crave, so-called, for the happy one only. We tend to look forward to have a happy one, a happy life, a successful life, right? So these are so-called the pulling force for the happiness. We tend to look at achievement, like for example, in the when we send our, everyone have children. I suppose your children are all probably in university, some of you in teenager, and etc. So if you try to reflect and recall, when we send our children to kindergarten, we want them to learn skill, skill how to write, how to read, how to count, the basic one, right? We want them to master those skills. So if they master it, we are happy. If they fail to master it, we are starting to worry already. And then even parents will be looking forward the mean how to help the children and etc. They seek for the help everywhere. So that is for the purpose of achievement. They learn certain skill. They want their children to perform. They want our children to perform, right? So if they got the skill in the class, they score out of 40, let's say, they score the last 10. Will you be happy? Not many will be happy, true or not? Not many will be happy. We tend to look for the first 10 lah, the top 10. Even though they can write, they can count, they have the skill. In terms of development tasks, they have fulfilled. But that is not the case. The case here is we look for achievement status, right? I used to see a teenage come to see me, and we try to discuss, talk about the problems. And these teenage tend to skip school. Very good girl. And then when we discuss, she told me that she has this so-called worries lah. Saying, what are you worrying about? She says it's about the results and etc. Then I asked, so what's your achievement right now? She said, okay lah. What do you mean by okay? Okay, 70, 80, some even 80 over lah. Oh, you're still not satisfied with what your achievement is? Because my mom say it must be 90 and above. 90 and above. So this is a status, right? This is status. It's not about the skill, whether the individual can count, can write, can read or not. No. Of course, in our life, throughout the life, we want to acquire those skills, important for our life. But what, in fact, that bother us is not about acquiring the skills. It's about achievement of the status. Goes to university also the same, right? University, and then when we work, also the same. Achievements of status. Then give us stress, accumulations of wealth. Enjoyment of sensual pleasure, right? Enjoyment, everyone know, I suppose. We like what we mentioned just now. We tend to have the pleasurable experience, and we try to grab that kind of experience with us, and we are looking forward to have that such experience again, right? But we forget that things change. True or not? Like for example, we visited a place with the family members, whole big family visited the country. So happy, so memorable, and that kind of memory stick in us. So when after that we crave for that sweet memory, we try to plan again and again. When people couldn't make it, it creates stress to us already. Then maybe the family members, some are grown up already. Last time during kindergarten, you can take leave anytime. In primary, cannot simply take leave. In secondary also, right? And even they turn adolescents or early adulthood, they don't feel liking to follow the family trip anymore. So things change. But we tend to grab into that kind of pleasurable moment, right? So this also a kind of force that make us wanting to crave for so-called the happiness in our so-called path of the development. Fame, and also stay young and beauty, right? This is the last one, very significant. True or not? Very significant. And maybe let's look at this. We will relate to the point later. When we talk about beautiful, the process of aging, in fact, is very disappointing when we talk about preserving or wanting the beauty to be preserved, right? And it disappoints us again and again. Okay, and we also try many ways, to touch up. In this MCO 2 years, about 2 years lockdown, we do lots of online teaching, online meeting or online kind of like conference communication. So when we meet online, we show video, right? And then almost every day we look at ourselves on the screen for 1 hour, 2 hours. Usually before lockdown, we look at ourselves, it's only in the morning when we comb our hair, going back home. Seldom look at the mirror. Not even we look at the mirror also not that long. But online learning or online teaching, I myself experienced, I look at the screens quite frequently. So when I look at the camera myself, adjusting the background and etc., how come the wrinkles or what coming up? Like it make me notice again and again, and it reminded me that okay, I'm not now. My age is catching up, something like that, right? So that is kind of also a good reflection when we talk about beauty, beautiful. And we tend to not to accept that because we cannot accept things we are which sadden us, which can create displeasure to us. True not? Right? When we look, just starting to look not that ideal looking, we tend to I don't want to look at it try to distract ourselves with something else right? So this is because of what just now we talked about sensual pleasure, craving for existence, bhava tanha. We want a good one, we want a happy moment, we want a good looking face, we want our body to be healthy all the time. If falling sick, we are not happy already. We tend not to accept that. That kind of situation is craving for non-existence. Vibhava tanha. We don't want displeasure, right? We want good things. We want happy things. So this, in fact, is the nature which Buddha has mentioned in the Four Noble Truths about dukkha. And this is the causes of the dukkha, which we tend not to look at this, but we look at the other positive side, and craving for the positive one, rather than understanding there is a positive and negative, and how we are facing the positive and negative, right? And those are more important, in fact, facing the process of aging or so-called growth. That is more important. Now, like what we mentioned, we tend to look at achievement and status. We look at positive aspects of growth, and we look at which is worth celebrating, and we tend not to accept which are displeasure, which can cause so-called what we call unpleasant feelings to us. We tend not to look at that. But in reality, that happened, right? In the process of aging, you see, this is the pictures of our brain. And throughout the process of aging, our brain, in fact, is shrinking. This is the normal one, and this is the shrinking one, right? Especially the prefrontal, which produce language. So when we turn older and older, of course, our language production will be affected. We must be aware of that, right? Our muscle, this is the number one, age 25. After 60s, our muscle also shrink, which we can't see, we are not aware of it, but it happened. Of course, strings not happen only like 60, then your muscle string. It happened continuously. And when you are aware of it, that is the time that you notice that already happened, right? But it doesn't happen in a day. It happened throughout the process of aging, which we are not aware of. Our neurons, nerves are all shrinking. Bones, the bone mass also. So, what I'm trying to say here, aging itself is a dukkha, right? And Buddha have pointed out that already. Despite of the aspects or the characteristics of the growth which we can see, we tend to attach to those pleasurable one, the celebrative one, and we try not to accept those unpleasant one. And this process happen, which we are not aware of. And it is so important when we started to notice that. And sometimes it can be late. It can be late already, right? It can be late. So it's good for us, like having these sessions, to start reflecting it, and then to get some so-called the insight from this reflection, right? Okay, reflections on old age. Maybe we can focus on the two main aspects. One is about physical, right? So we know that our physical part, physically, our body age over the time, right? Like what I shown the previous slide, in terms of the muscle, in terms of the brain size, in terms of nerves, in terms of bones, and etc. It age over the time. And when we notice it, in fact, there are indicators, there are indicators. How many of us, in the scales of 1 to 5, 5 is very frequent, 1 is not at all. How many of us, you are aware that your body is aging from time to time? Maybe give me a number, sorry. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Oh, okay. Then no need to reflect lah. I think good to have that skill. If we are aware of it, right? Myself a bit slow. I'm a bit slow. I call myself a slow learner. I aware of this physical kind of like decaying or aging frequently recently. But previously, like for example, I give you an example. Even that incident happened, I didn't know that is because of aging. Like for example, when I was, I think 20s, late 20s lah, we are celebrating, and then they want to open up the bottle, right, of drink. So they couldn't get the opener. So okay, come give it to me. I open with my teeth lah. Yeah, I can open with my teeth when I was young. So because I participated in lion dance, So lion dance, when they display these oranges, even beer or what, we need to open up. Then we need to open the oranges also, beer also we brought up, So we open with the teeth. So that time I tried to open with my teeth also. So what happened is, crack lah my teeth. So from that on, I said something wrong with my teeth. I still was not aware that I'm aging. That means the what you call the substance of the tea is not strong anymore. I cannot do that anymore compared to maybe during the 15, 17, 18 time. Okay, cannot anymore. So I still didn't know that, right? And when we grow older and older, when we learn Dharma, we reflect on this quite frequently. So when anything happen in our body, we tend to notice quite well, quite well. Wrinkles are coming out already, growing gray hair already. Body is not that strong as what we were, right? Tend to feel lethargy, weak. Okay, many things that we want to do, but when we do it, you see the effect already. I follow my brother hiking. So they are in the group, running up. So I follow them running up, slow run up until the top. Wow, that is very bad experience to me. I never had that kind of suffocating. I couldn't catch up the breath, and it's very bad experience. I couldn't imagine that I would have that kind of experience. So that shows our body is not able to to do what actually we intend, we want to do anymore. So we have to choose. We have to choose. We have to select wisely what suits us, what our body can do, and etc. At the point of middle and late adulthood. So that is the time. That's why we call it critical time for us to reflect and also to plan forward. Right? That's important. And another experience, physical one. This is not only physical. I think it's about emotional, social emotional. This happened, I think, many years ago, 10 years. So I brought my children go to Genting. Genting, before the renovation, there is also kind of like sky lifter, something like that. You go up to the end, then it drop you, zoom, and then go up again, right? After that experience, I dare not take the ride anymore. After coming down, feel like vomiting, very, that experience I couldn't. Previously, I'm okay with it. These were all no issue at all, no issue. But this time around, if you ask me to go again, I don't think I can take that challenge, right? So this is also a sign of aging, signs of aging. In terms of a mentor, our mind, when we talk about mentor here, referring to the process of thinking, reasoning, memory, decision making, problem solving. These are all a mental process. So when you talk about mental processes, aging also affects our so-called mental ability, right? If we are not aware of, if we do not train it, the effect will be sometime beyond our imagination when it happens, right? And especially those are like, of course, some other disease related to mental kind of what do you call issues relating to memory and etc. Of course, will be very challenging, not to that particular individual only, and also to the family. So in terms of memory, we tend to forget things already. Tend to forget things. And I noticed that recently I used to forget things. And this happened like especially the working memory is not that good already. That means things that just happen also sometime. We tend to sleep, forget. So that is also relating to memory. If we don't train it, If we don't be mindful, mindfulness is in fact is very helpful for us to cope with these changes. Reasoning, language, and etc. We mentioned about this, right? Some statistic to share with you. This is related to the aging, the process of aging. And if we don't take actions on this, probably it will also affect once when we notice it, if sometime it can be late also. Like for example, this is age-adjusted death rate, death rate. Means this researcher, I think in 1989, Blair and colleagues, a study about whether the fitness can in fact contribute to early death or not, right? So the finding shows that there are three categories of fitness: low, medium, and high. So it shows very obviously if the fitness is preserved, if you maintain, probably the death rate will be lower. You see, lower. High fitness, low death rate. Low fitness, high death rate. And men is higher than women. So men have to be careful. A woman's is lower in terms of the death rate. This is one of the research. And for your information, in fact, our life expectancy has been increased, right? So during Buddha time, I think people would like to live up to 60s, will be considered lucky already, consider a healthy one, right? But nowadays, you can live up to 70, 75. In Malaysia, is 75. And women have longer this longevity compared to men in Malaysia, Malaysia's context. So we can live up to 75, in 80s, in Japan, 80, the highest in the world. But what about the quality of life across the aging? That is one question. And Buddha used to say, if you live up to, we can live for many years. It is better to live a full, quality, meaningful day compared to a long life with idle life. That means we are not living a not meaningful life, right? So, in fact, life expectancy is one good thing when you see the increase. But on the other hand, we also should focus on the quality also of life. And another statistic here is about percentage of individuals expected to develop Alzheimer disease in the next 10 years. That means 65, 60 and above is considered late adulthood. And the aging indicator tend to be very obvious already after 60s. So 65, after 10 years, they compare 65s with 75 with 85. So the older we grow, more we tend more to have this so-called disease of Alzheimer. And in this case, women has more numbers compared to men. Then women have to be careful also. Just now men have to be careful. So in brief, regardless gender, aging happened to us. And we have to be reflective. We have to be careful. And we need to probably mindful in our so-called process of aging, right? Now, one sutta, Upajjhatthana Sutta, Buddha mentioned about asking us to do lots of reflections. And it is good to reflect on this aging. I'm subject to aging, right? So I'm subject to aging here is not looking at only the growth of our development, from what age to what age, and then I'm growing older, and how I'm going to celebrate my birthday. Rather, we focus on I subject to aging. That means every day we must be aware that aging happen in us. Either we can see it physically, or we can't see it, but it happen, right? Happen. We have to remind us. This is a kind of reminder, telling us you have to be mindful already. What are the things you can do? What are the activities you can do? What are the food you can take, and etc. already. So that is a kind of reminder. I have not gone beyond aging. This is the first fact that one should reflect on often, whether one is woman or man, lay or ordained, right? So it's important. And then we shall also reflect on, I'm subject to illness, which we'll be going to talk about this in detail next week. I'm subject to death the following week. Grow different or separate from all that is dear and appealing to me, right? We should also reflect on this, okay? Because it is also cause dukkha. If we don't reflect on it, well, we tend to, like what we say, that bhavatanha. We want our family members to be always with us. We want our people who are dear to us to be with us all the time. We tend not to accept people who we cannot, work with, and etc. So that is vibhava tanha. So it's good for us to reflect on this statement also. The last one, I'm an owner of my actions, heir of my actions, and born of my actions, related through my action, and have my action as my arbitrator. Whatever I do for good or evil, will fall. That means we should also be careful of what what we should be doing, right? Which can contribute to the effects of the karmic effect, right? So that is important. All right, now moving on, there is, I would like to share the story from this Dhammapada, verse 150, regarding Rupananda Theri. So this Rupananda Theri, having this wrong view regarding her body and her beauty, and so that caused her kind of like a stress. And Buddha helped this Nanda to get insight from what you call this so-called aging, right? So let's look at the video.
When she was born, Princess Nanda was celebrated and very well loved. She was born to King Suddhodana, who was the Buddha's father, and Mahapajapati Gotami, the Buddha's stepmother, who had raised him since birth. Nanda was well-bred, graceful, and extremely beautiful. In order to distinguish her from others with the same name, she was known as Rupananda, meaning beautiful Nanda. Over time, many members of her family, the royal house of Sakyans, left to follow the Lord Buddha. Among them were Rupananda's brother, her cousins, her mother, and finally, many other Sakyan ladies. They were extremely proud that a member of their clan had become the self-awakened Buddha. Rupananda decided that she too would ordain. However, unlike the others, she did not ordain out of faith or desire for enlightenment. Instead, her main motivation was to conform and not stand out. For so long, her thoughts had been consumed by her beauty and her popularity. Now that she was a bhikkhuni, a female monk, Rupananda felt new pressure. When many of the bhikkhunis would go to see the Buddha and listen to the Dhamma, Rupananda would make an excuse and refuse to go. One day, the Buddha called all the bhikkhunis to him, and Rupananda refused to go. She was afraid that the Buddha would admonish her for her lack of practice and her obsession with her appearance. Eventually, the Buddha sent her a personal invitation, and she had no choice but to go see him. When she got there, Rupananda was ashamed and scared. However, the Buddha addressed her, spoke of her good qualities, and did not talk about things that displeased her. Pleasantly surprised, Rupananda took delight in his words. The Buddha knew that she was open to learning now, but was not ready for heavy instruction. Because the Buddha knew that Rupananda was obsessed with her beauty, he used his psychic powers to conjure up an even more beautiful girl. When Rupananda saw her, she could not take her eyes off the mirage. But as Rupananda watched, the young, beautiful girl began to age rapidly right before her eyes. After the woman's death, her body began to decay and all of her bodily fluids leaked out. Rupananda internalized this vision. She saw that just like the young, beautiful girl could not avoid aging or change, neither could she. She realized that the body that she cherished, adorned, and worshipped would eventually die, leak bodily fluids, and even be eaten by maggots. Nothing that was left would be desirable or attractive. At this moment, Rupananda changed her wrong views about her body. For her whole life, she saw her body as desirable. She believed that her body was beautiful, never changing, and worthy of attachment. But now she knew the truth. Her body was constantly changing and aging. It was unable to be the way she wanted it to be. Rupananda then let go of all of her attachments to her physical body and became a Sotapanna, a stream enterer.
All right. So, have you watched this movie, this clip or this story before? No? And this story is quite similar to the story of Kema also. Kema, the lady, woman, disciple, the female disciples, first foremost disciples of Buddha, right? Is about reflections of aging and death, right? The process of so-called aging, illness, and death. So if you look at this video, what actually can you relate? What come into your mind when you look at the video? Rupananda is the half sister of Buddha. So when Buddha returned to Kapilavatthu, many of Sakyan they ordained under Buddha. so-called what do you call teaching, right? And then Rupananda is very beautiful, beautiful princess, and she in fact refused to do that lah. But in fact, this what we call reluctance of Rupananda is caused by her attachment, right? Those are the cause of the suffering attached to the beauty, like what we mentioned. And also, the attachment is supported by the wrong view or the ignorance, right? Because she probably didn't really look at so-called the process of the aging, and how terrible if we are aware of the process of aging. And Buddha managed to show her that the process in front of her, and she really can experience how this process happened. And these scenes has given an insight to Nanda. And then finally she got the fructions of Sotapanna, right? So in fact, when you look at this story, you can relate that the body is built up with bones, which covered with flesh and blood, and it decay. And finally, we die, right? And these reflections, as what is mentioned in the Upajjhatthana Sutta, we should reflect on to remind us what. Otherwise, we always think that I still can do it. I think I can play this game, but playing, you have to consider the effect. But if you reflect on it, or probably, not for me, I think I prefer some other, games rather than this. I probably, in terms of activities, in terms of food also, maybe I don't think I like it, but I don't think I can take it. So that kind of reflection, right? That kind of reflection. So our body, decay and death. And this reflection not only for the lay people to reflect on, ordained people also reflect on. Somewhat monastery, they place the skeleton, at the monastery, in fact, for the purpose of reflection. And some people probably would think, oh, this must be black magic one, or what, or like using for some kind of supernatural kind of purpose. No, it is not. It is for the reflection. Reflection. So every day we look at the skeleton to remind us we are one of them, but we are moving one, okay, something like that. So this is, in fact, through the story, it reminds us about this. And with the arisings of the new image, this is when Rupananda looked at the process of aging, and she realized that, in fact, things change, the impermanence is there, right? And when she see the impermanence, she started to aware that she shouldn't have attached to this so-called beauty, right? So old image disappear, and she came to realize that there was a continuous process of change and decay in our body, which we couldn't see it. We can only aware of when we see the indicator, like just now, cracked tooth. Even some got this cracked tooth is still not aware of. You know, if we don't reflect on it, we just take it as an incident instead of kind of like aging effect, right? So we should reflect on it. And in the body, changes happen in the body. With the coming of this realization, her attachment to the body diminished. So not only attachment, right? Not only attachment. Sometimes we are affected with our preconceived kind of idea or knowledge, which we have learned, we have been learning from young age, right? you should take this food. This food is good. If you can take, maybe like for example, people say lah, last time when I was young in adolescent time, if you can take this wild meat, it make your body strong. Wild meat, wild meat lah, wild meat, exotic one lah. If you can drink the bloods of a certain animal, oh, it's good lah. Then people are looking for that, you know, monkey brains, certain parts of a cow, when you cook soup, it gives a certain effect, something like that. So that's kind of wrong view, right? Contributing to how we see so-called life. That in fact, if we reflect on this aging, rather than looking at or carrying with those wrong view, then in fact it helps us to be aware of aging, right? Those wrong views, in fact, in perspective of Buddha's teaching, is about ignorance, right? Ignorance. We has been exposed with this information, and nowadays, what do you call the effects of the social media is very, very so-called massive. Whatever information we can get it easily, and whatever information we even not looking at, it pop up, right? Then we gain those information, we take those knowledge as our reference, which is not probably so helpful, right? So according to Avijja Sutta, you're talking about ignorance, not knowing. It's good for us to build our right view. A true reflection is in fact giving us kind of opportunity to build up the right view also, right? So a blessed one said once, among ignorance is leading to attainments and unskillful quality. We're looking for the wild meat, or so-called the exotic meat or food, probably is a kind of like unskillful one, right? Unskillful quality because of the wrong view, followed by the lacks of conscience and lack of concern. And because of this ignorance, wrong view arises. And in one's wrong view, when we have such a view, we tend to have this intention to look for it, true or not? Right? And people say, if you go to Bangkok, you have to go to the Buddha Four Faces one. You have to go there, you know. Then you need to get something. Then you pray down. When you come back, you get lucky whole year. Wrong view will give you wrong intention. So you go to Bangkok, instead of going to do dana or going to visit temple for the Sangha dana, you go to pray to get luck, right? So that's kind of like a wrong so-called view contribute to wrong intention or wrong resolve. And the wrong resolve can contribute to our speech and action, right? Speech and action. So we tend to believe in it. We tend to talk about it. We tend to also maybe be influenced by others, right? And then we do it, the actions. Then with wrong actions, regularly, it build out a habit, a livelihood, wrong livelihood. And then with the wrong livelihood, it lead to wrong effort. We want to try maybe some other experience also with such kind of similarity, but try to look for it maybe in different way. Wrong effort, right? Wrong effort, wrong mindfulness. Wrong mindfulness, wrong concentration. So in this Avijja Sutta, in fact, ignorance is the cause of the suffering, which we should be aware of, and then we should what we call reflect more on the Dhamma to contribute or to give us a better understanding or the right understanding. All right. So how to prepare ourselves for facing aging, especially when we turn to the stage that we always or we frequently notice that those are the indicator of aging, right? And we need to prepare ourselves. First of all, we need to accept the truth. It is the nature. So the nature of aging, we need to accept the process of aging, right? And what we can do is to maybe minimize the negative effect, to minimize the negative effect by maintaining it, right? But we cannot modify or get rid of this. Cannot. So we have to accept aging. We have to accept that it happened to us. It happened to everyone. And it is a nature that everyone have to face it, either with pleasure or without pleasure, right? So that is the nature. First, we need to understand the truth of life, as what Buddha mentioned. Buddha mentioned the Four Noble Truths, right? Noble Truth. So since we know that aging is dukkha, then we should look for the cessations of the dukkha, the path to the cessation. And the path to the cessation here, just now, we have already mentioned in the Avijja Sutta. To curb with the wrong view, the ignorance, and then which can contribute to the every aspects of our life, right? If we have right understanding, we see the nature of aging, we can accept the nature of aging. It gives us right understanding. With that right understanding, we have a right intention. It affects our actions, our livelihood, and our efforts, and what we call this mindfulness and the concentration, right? So it is in the string, a kind of like effect. So we should understand that. That's the truth. Huh? And then develop a right view. Develop a right view here, like what I mentioned just now. We need to accept the truth. What causes the dukkha? What are the dukkha? What causes the dukkha? And then we need to deal with it. In the process of dealing with it, what we can do, we can minimize. Like, for example, death is certain, right? Illness is certain. Aging is certain. What we can do, we cannot modify it. We can reduce. In order to be healthy, to maybe reduce your so-called muscle mass, your bone mass, maybe you need to choose the right food. You need to do certain exercise which can strengthen your muscle and bone. So this is what we can do, right? To minimize it. But having said that, it doesn't mean that we are craving for it, right? We are having the right view in order to maintain or sustain the body for the purpose of learning and continuous learning. Not, in fact, for a craving to preserve it and then to look for the way, any kind of way to maintain the body. No, not so, right? So this is to develop a kind of right view. And also we need to also appreciate, in fact, aging is a good sign also. Those time, we I think many of us also believe that if we have an old, what we call parents or grandparents at home, is a treasure, right? Why is a treasure? Because many things we haven't encountered, or we haven't gone through, or we have not experienced, they have experienced. So we can get opinion from there, right? That is one. Another one is many of us in this so-called double income, earner, husband and wife work. Grandparents are looking after the children, right? Instead of sending for the babysitter, etc. And they can in fact learn the quality from the grandparents besides their parents, right? So living with grandparents and parents compared to those living without grandparents, the quality will be different. And research shows that children who live in a bigger family with extended family members, their social skills is better, right? So we should appreciate that, in fact, right? And we need to also be aware that one day we turn old also. One day our ability and our strength will be also decline. Then we need to take care of the aged people at home. And our children will be taking care of us also one day, right? So having that kind of understanding. In fact, Buddha mentioned this also in Sigalovada Sutta, right? Saying that we have to also preserve the traditions, take care of our parents, preserve the traditions of our parents, and etc. Right? So this is to develop kind of like the right view, and then appreciating life. Better to live for one day of food, like what we mentioned already. Buddha said that the quality of life is so important. To preserve the quality of life, is Buddha mentioned, is better to live for one day full of vigor than 100 years lazy and the idle, right? So this is in Dhammapada of 111 and 12, 11112. Okay. Next, I would like to invite Sister Hussein to share with us, to wrap up today's topic about aging with two Dhammapada words. Sister.
Good morning, brother and sister. Okay, I'm going to share a story for the Dhammapada verse 155 and 156. So this is a story of the son of Mahadana. He's a very rich man son. Okay, so Buddha uttered this verse in Migadaya wood. Okay, so we reference to the son. Okay, this son of this rich man is from Varanasi. Okay, so since young he don't study one because his family is very rich, and then when come to the age to get married, he married a rich man daughter. So both of them has got no education, right? So when both this husband and wife, their parents pass away, they inherit the wealth. Okay, so at the point of time, they inherited 80 crores, means it's like about, I Google, it's about 45 million ringgit Malaysia. All right, so at that point of time, I think it's a lot. It's a lot. Okay, so they both were very rich, and at the same time, they were very ignorant as well. So they day in, day out, they actually just spend money, enjoy their life, and then until they don't even save or think of how to grow their money. All right, so one day, after spending the money, they even sell their land, their house, even the house. So because they have been like living in this kind of life, right? So one day when they got no money, they don't even know how to survive through. So what they do is like they have to beg for food, right? Until the extent. So one day the Buddha saw this rich man's son, okay, was leaning against the wall of a monastery. Okay, so this man was actually taking the leftover food that was being offered to the Buddha. So Buddha just smiled. So Venerable Ananda was very curious and asked Buddha, "Why do you smile?" So Buddha replied. He said, "Ananda, look at this son of a very rich man. He had lived a useless life, an aimless life of pleasure, not pressure, as pleasure. Okay, so 3 things. If he had learned to look after his riches in the first stage of his life, he would have been a top-ranking rich man. If he had become a bhikkhu, he could have been an arahant, and his wife would be an anagami. Okay. If he had learned to look after his riches in the second stage of his life, he would have been a second-rank rich man. If he had become a bhikkhu, he could have been, he could be an anagami, and his wife would be a sakadagami. Okay, so if he had learned to look after his riches in the third stage of his life, he will have been a third-rank rich man. If he had become a bhikkhu, he could have been a sakadagami, and his wife would be a sotapanna. All right. So, however, he has done nothing in all 3 stages of his life. He had lost all his worldly riches. He had lost all opportunities of attaining any of the magas and palas. So this is a story from this verse, Dhammapada verse 155 and 156. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. So this is the last slide, changing dukkha to sukha, right? So constant reflection, like what we mentioned, daily reflection will be good, and we need to get guidance and reminder from a Dhamma teacher, listening to the Dhamma, and support by Kalyana Mita, right? We need a groups of friends who can share what we call the interest together with faith in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and build up right view, very is important, and then we can age gracefully. That's what we mentioned just now, right? So with that, I think I would want to end the sharing and be all of us happy and well.